I want to talk to Sharri Markson, my former colleague, about a story she published in The Australian yesterday about some alarming new developments in terms of Chinese interference in our universities. Sharri, welcome to Watercooler. Your revelation of this 1,000 Talents program, tell us about it.
So look, we know the Chinese government has about 200 recruitment programs, but this is their most prominent one. And they sign up academics and also entrepreneurs from around the world. They get them to sign legally binding contracts. So even if the academic is in the full-time employ of University of New South Wales or University of Sydney or, an American university, they're asked to sign these legally binding contracts where they receive salaries and generous research funding and a variety of other perks, which can include tuition for their children paid, a job for their spouse, even housing subsidies. But in return, they've got to lodge all their intellectual property, their research, their inventions, all need to be owned effectively by the Chinese institution or university. They need to be patented in China. So this is why the FBI is so concerned about this program, because it's a form of intellectual property theft, particularly if the American or Australian university doesn't know about it, if it hasn't been disclosed.
How long has this been going on? It sounds extraordinary that this should go completely under the radar.
The program launched for foreigners in 2011, but President Xi Jinping's civil-military fusion, where all the universities in China came under the control, if you like, of the PLA, that was in 2015. So it's really been very concerning since then, because there's the high risk that research that may have a defense application is being misused to modernize China's military and even for weapons development or for surveillance of minorities and dissidents. You can see that the areas where China is focusing on attracting foreign talent is in artificial intelligence in many cases, and also a lot of those who've been recruited also specialize in drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, and this is part of the future of aerial warfare.
So this is extraordinarily sensitive information, right? This is not just, stuff about, canning fruit or anything. This is really, really, vital to our security.
Well, I think that's where it's quite tricky, because Australia does have a Defence Controls Act where if information is sensitive, if research is sensitive, you can't export it. Defence export controls. But the problem is that a lot of the research that China is accessing under the 1,000 Talents plan, it has a dual application. It can have a military application. So it can also be used for, medicine or agriculture, a variety of other purposes. But it does have a defence application in many cases, and therefore it's open to misuse by the Chinese Communist Party for its weapons development. And just on that point, a New Zealand academic who's quite well renowned for covering this space, her name's Anne-Marie Brady, she released a report just in July this year that spoke about how China's military, really a decade ago, was quite far behind, whereas now it's competing with the United States. And that's partly to hacking, partly to espionage, but also she attributes it partly to foreign recruitment programs through which they've been able to, effectively get access to or steal the best technology, the highest technology all around the world. I mean, even Russia, there's 1,000 Talents recipients in Russia, and then apply it to whatever they want to.
So do the academics concerned and the universities declare this?
Do the academics declare it?
Yeah, do they actually make a declaration on this or not?
Look, there has been no guidelines for the universities at all in this space. There's been nothing until November 2019 in Australia, where Dan Tehan put in place foreign interference guidelines. But they're still guidelines. And so, as part of our investigation at the Australian, Kyla Lasukin and me, we contacted all of the universities and said, how many of your academics are part of the 1,000 Talents plan or another Chinese government recruitment program? And, apart from the University of Tasmania, basically the universities couldn't tell us. They couldn't answer the question. So either, they don't have this oversight, there hasn't been proper disclosure mechanisms, but what complicates this is that a lot of the Thousand Talents contracts that we've seen have a clause in it that says you can't disclose your part of the Thousand Talents plan without permission. And the Chinese government has taken the whole program underground since April this year. It's wiped and censored mentions on the internet. You can't even search for it on Chinese internet search engines, or you can't discuss it on WeChat. And that's a reaction to the FBI, investigating this space so actively that the Chinese Communist Party has gone underground with it. So the truth is, we just don't know how many scientists are part of the Thousand Talents plan or another recruitment program.
I mean, one assumes that few, or probably none of these academics possibly actually went into it actively wanting to give away intellectual property or secrets to the Chinese. But you would have thought, a bell would ring in their heads, like, why the Chinese government want to give me all this money, business class flights to Beijing, education for my children? Wouldn't they, they'd smell a rat, you would have thought.
Look, I can't speak for the motivation of why anyone signs up to these programs, but the scientists probably see it as quite innocent and important international collaboration. And it's also very difficult for some academics to get funding, and they really, need funding to continue to do their research. But look, I can't speak about their motivation, and it, I'm sure in many cases it's completely innocent, and the problem is that the information is at risk of being misused for other purposes.
Yeah, and look, we understand that. I mean, collaboration between academics, between universities, is a very valuable thing. I mean, it helps lead to the expansion of knowledge. So it's not that principle that's at stake. I guess, though, what we've become sharply aware of over the last few years, and starkly in the last 6 months, is the fact that China is not a country, or its government at least, is not a government that plays by the same rules as us. And what might have seemed acceptable a couple of years ago, I think we now realise we have to be very much on our guard and much more careful in dealing with China, don't you think?
I think the Australian public has seen that in the wake of the COVID pandemic, because China quite clearly is trying to take strategic advantage of the pandemic, and it's becoming more aggressive, both in terms of our trade, retaliation, and also its actions in the South China Sea. It's hacking the fact that, this ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, came out just a few days ago and said that there has been foreign powers, and we assume those to be China and Russia, who have been targeting the research institutes in Australia that have been developing a COVID vaccine. So really, China's actions in the wake of this pandemic, I think, have made Australians sit up and take notice. And just on that point, though, of international collaboration, of course we welcome it, and of course it's positive, but I was so surprised during this investigation. I interviewed Chen Yonglin, who you probably remember defected. He was a Chinese diplomat who defected to Australia in 2005, and it was caused tensions at the time in the China-Australia relationship. But I interviewed him for this investigation, and he said to me that the governments and the universities don't quite realise the seriousness of the threat from foreign recruitment programs like the Thousand Talents. He described it as theft. That was his word. And then he said that universities should halt all collaboration with China when it comes to high tech.
Well, Sharri, look, I mean, my time in newspapers taught me that investigative journalism of this kind is very important, but it takes energy, enterprise, and indeed some courage, I think, to follow these stories through. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for your contribution to Watercooler tonight.
Thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate it.